Friday, January 10th, 2025. And yesterday was the funeral of former President Jimmy Carter, who died at 100 years old. And oh my gosh. First of all, it was actually really sweet. The eulogy that was given by his grandson, Jason, I think, was just delightful. It was heartfelt. It was filled with lovely stories about his grandpa. Like that's who he's talking about, his grandpa. He wasn't talking about the statesman. He wasn't talking about the former president. He was talking about his grandpa, and they were great stories and really emphasized his humility and humanity, and they were funny. It was really sweet to watch. It was interesting to see the crowd. We're going to talk about who was in the first two rows of that funeral because it was all the former presidents, current president and vice president and spouses, and all the living former presidents um, and their spouses, except Michelle Obama. I don't think she wanted to sit next to the orange toddler. And he was so when Jason was telling these stories, and people would laugh and giggle, and everybody that they would show a crowd shot would be engaging and smiling or looking warmly towards him. And Trump just sat there, and so did Melania with these scowls on their faces. Trump mostly just stared at Kamala Harris. It was very weird. Um, and I think he hates it when he's not the center of attention. So the stories weren't about him, and he wasn't talking. So he's wildly bored. Um, and then Biden got up and gave a eulogy about the statesman and talking about honor and integrity and avoiding the trappings of power. And I mean, it was so specifically pointed at, hey, Donald Trump, this man is everything that you will never be, and you are everything that's wrong with what can happen when the wrong person gets elected into the presidency. It was it was super shady. And it was weird because I felt like it didn't really necessarily honor Jimmy Carter, who he considered a really good friend, as much as it did say, basically to America, you in danger, girl. It did kind of feel like a funeral for the country as much as it did a funeral for Jimmy Carter, sort of a death to democracy kind of feeling to it. It did have some sense of impending doom. Um, but so okay, so they're sitting there in the front row. It's Joe, Jill, Kamala, Doug, and Kamala didn't say hello to anybody. She didn't shake anybody's hand. After she sat down, Obama started to speak to Trump, who was sitting next to him. She turned to look to see what was going on, but they never exchanged words. And it was like, what the fuck are they talking about? Well, the look on her face was like, what the fuck are they talking about? And a sigh or just an exhale. And there was a really cute moment that was captured that's going around the internet of Doug just checking in with her, and she looks at him, and they just lock eyes, and she smiles, and it's like, that kind of like unspoken communication when you have with someone, it's like, yep, we know that they're assholes. Or did you just hear that? Yeah, I heard that. What a fucking dick. Um, anyway, I would love to know what those conversations were going on, because then in the second row it was Bill and Hillary, and Bill was a little too jovial through the whole thing. But his I think he's got a few brain cells out the door as well. And then next to them was W and Laura Bush, and then Obama, and then the orange toddler and his mail order bride. And then behind them were Dan Quayle and his wife. She never changed her hairdo in all these years. It's still, I mean, there's less of it, but it's just the exact same swoop. And then there was no Cheney, uh, Al Gore, then Mike Pence, and Pence's wife, Karen, mother. And when Trump came in, because they sort of came in order. Like that row, the vice president row got filled, and then Trump came in, and then Obama, and then like they came in sort of reverse order. And so when Trump came in, he actually shook Al Gore's hand and Mike Pence's. I was surprised Mike Pence stood up and shook his hand. Karen Pence did not stand, did not even look. Melania tried to extend her hand, and she just looked right down into her little program, having none of it. I don't have a lot of love for Karen Pence, but I do like that level of pettiness. Like, I don't want to touch you. I'm not even going to acknowledge you exist. I really, I don't know. I got a kick out of that. Um, and then Obama came and shook the vice president's hands, but no, but Trump never stood up for anybody. Anybody else who walked in, he never stood up, and nobody shook his hand. Like it's a giant. You don't belong here. Somebody said online, I feel like all the ex-presidents have a text chain that excludes Trump, and they just make fun of him on it, which would be hilarious. Um, then uh, uh, Obama comes in and we did that, and Trump uh, W comes in and gives Obama a belly tap. That was like, right, it passes by like, hey, old pal. Ignored Trump entirely. He and Laura didn't even look at at either of the Trumps at all. So they sit down, and then Bill and Hillary came around the other end, and they sat down, and then the current vice president and president came in, and um, uh, but through the whole thing, or the sort of the preamble of it, before anybody started speaking, Trump is just leaning over into Obama and constantly talking to him. Um, and at some points, Obama's laughing and he sometimes replies. And, um, you know, I just, what the fuck were they talking about? What could he have possibly been saying? And, I got to give Obama the patience award. It's like dealing with a squirrely toddler. It's like, shh, this is not talking time. No, it's quiet time. Um, and he like in it just Trump hogged all of Obama's. Obama didn't really get to talk to anybody else. At one point, he did turn around and get a little minute with a couple of his presidents. Bush, of course, turned around and like swatted Quayle on the head with this program. Like, oh, what a weirdo. Um, so then they're all sitting there, and this funeral's going on, and it's just like, and Jill and um, Kamala didn't speak to each other at all, which was a little bit weird. I don't know if there's some sort of beef there because Joe got squeezed out of the election. It was just weird to see them all together. Hillary didn't look in that direction towards Trump at all. There were several moments where she was just beaming during Biden's eulogy that was just like, "Yep, you're getting them." Uh, and it just the whole thing seems so uncomfortable from with the Clintons and the Trumps and the um, uh, Harris and Emhoffs and Trump. Doug Emhoff didn't. He shook Melania's hand but ignored Trump. I mean, there's got to be some serious shit and animosity between those two women and him that is just far deeper than um, anyone else's. I don't. Obama got the babysitting seat, um, and he did a great job with it. There were no outbursts. But again, it's like we're all here to do a thing, and Trump can't stand that it's not about him, so he's just got to keep talking. Um, and then he came out afterwards and gave a little speech to people, press, whatever, and said, somebody asked him, "What were you talking to President Obama about?" And he said, "Yeah, it looked like we might even be friends, and we might be." Never answered the question about what they talked about. Um, but then he said, "We were all together in a room backstage before we went on." Like it's a performance. Like he's going, like, and because I think that's how he views his whole public life is that he's performing. He's playing this character, and he's got to live up to it. And so, backstage and before we go on, he's like he thinks he's some sort of um, you know famous actor, or he's an entertainer, which is really all he is. He's not good at anything. He's not a good business person. He's not a good. Um, it, it- well, I guess you can't say he's not good at politics because he did some. Well, I think he's good at cheating, so we'll leave that at that. Um, and like just the whole thing, like I'm glad he didn't wreck it by some sort of outburst or trying to pull focus. There is a moment. There's a great photograph when the casket is coming back down the aisle, and everyone's sitting there with their hands on their hearts because the casket's draped in the flag, and Trump's just standing there. And I said to somebody, "Well, he doesn't have a heart, so he wouldn't know where to put his hand. He's only accustomed to using it to grab women by the um, the hoo ha." Anyway, I watched it last night, and I had to sort of watch in pieces of various things that I had recorded because I started recording it too late, but I ended up seeing all the good parts. Um, and I don't know, it's a bizarre notion to have all those people in that room, and I would love to know the backstory of who's got a beef with who and why. Because it's beyond politics. Um, and part of that is, we understand that Trumpism, everybody hates him, but W seems to hate him even more than the two women who lost to him, who lost the electoral college to him, because Hillary won the popular vote by 3 million votes. But like W's hatred was just seems so visceral, and yet he didn't have the courage to go out on the campaign trail to campaign against him. So I don't understand. Like, there's I don't know, interesting stuff though. And I'm still I still feel like the Democrats are far too relaxed about this whole thing. So we'll see. We've got 10 days until inauguration. So maybe we'll see what else but Papa Joe can pull out of his ass between now and then. He did give guaranteed 100% cost reimbursement to fighting the LA fires for 180 days. So Trump can't pull the rug from under him under that 10 days from now. And oh, I forgot about today's other big news. Trump got sentenced in his felony conviction, and I don't even remember what it's called. It's like um, disqualified. I looked it up and now I've forgotten it because it was a stupid phrase that I'd never heard before. Let's just look Trump sentencing. We will uh, uh, unconditional discharge, which means zero things. He gets no fine. He gets no incarceration. He gets no confinement. He gets nothing. Zero things happen. Unqualified. What did I just say? I can't even remember anything. 1 minute. Unconditional discharge. So zero things. That's just such bullshit. But he is a convicted felon, so all those countries that don't allow convicted felons, Canada, UK, Australia, Japan, I hope that you're going to look at all your fine print and make sure that he fills out the paperwork to enter the country, because he's technically not allowed without some special dispensation from your government. So keep that in mind, kids.